Despite all the challenges that the pandemic threw at us and the endless lockdowns, Australia's housing markets experienced a once-in-a-generation boom in property prices in 2021. So what's in store for 2022? Let's have a look. Hi everyone, Tuan Duong from Durotax here for another video designed to help you become a better property investor. We're almost well into the first quarter of the year, and the burning question on every investor's mind is, are we going to have another year like 2021? Well, if there's anything we've learned over the last few years is that it's hard to forecast property trends because who knows what's going to be thrown at us next. But there are quite a few experts in the field that can help us give you a good idea of what to expect. So, if you're looking at buying your first investment property or looking to add more properties to your portfolio, here are a few market trends you should keep an eye out for. But before we start, we want to be clear that this video is for informational purposes only. In no way should you interpret this as financial or tax advice. We always recommend working with a qualified financial advisor or a tax agent to give you the best advice for your situation. All right, let's get straight into it. Home values climbed an enormous 22.2% year on year from November 2020 to 2021, with the estimated value of Australia's residential real estate market lifting from $7.2 trillion to a record high of $9.4 trillion in just 12 months. And by the end of January 2022, real estate in Australia had climbed to $9.7 trillion. But the common consensus amongst most experts is that property values are tipped to keep climbing this year, but at a much slower rate. While we're heading into a period of strong economic growth, according to CoreLogic's research director Tim Lawless, it's unlikely that we will continue to see the same growth rate over the next 2 years that we have seen over the past 2 years. Based on CoreLogic statistics, property prices rose 1.1% in January 2022 alone, and Tim believes that this increase is to be maintained throughout the year. Australians would still see a 13% or more increase in prices annually. But compared to 2021's price increase of 22.4%, the price growth is definitely slowing down. There are 3 things that could slow the market. The first is an increase in the number of properties for sale, the second is an interest rate rise, and the third is heavy restrictions on finance. The number of properties for sale has picked up over the past few months, primarily because lockdowns have now ended. Already, this appears to be slowing the market because the number of days the property is on the market have increased, and we've seen a slight drop in average active bidders at auctions. According to CoreLogic's latest statistics, although January is typically the quietest month for home sales, activity across Australia was estimated to be 15.1% higher than January last year and 39.4% above the previous 5-year average. Now, this will slow down pricing but definitely won't be a factor in driving down prices. Then, there may be a rise in interest rates, but property experts aren't 100% sure if it will happen before the Reserve Bank's expected rise in 2024. The key indicator to watch is inflation. This is expected to be higher than usual in the coming quarters, but this is widely expected to be temporary. If that's the case, there likely won't be an interest rate rise in 2022. And the third reason is that there has been quite a lot of restrictions to finance. Specifically, regulators like APRA are expected to implement debt-to-income limits, preventing new borrowers from being approved for loans 6 times greater than their annual wage. Right now, around 22% of all home loans exceed that limit. This idea behind the restrictions, according to the Commonwealth Bank, is to allow breathing space for things like interest rate hikes. While nothing necessarily radical has been done at this stage, it's likely further restrictions will be put in place early next year, particularly if investors' lending does not slow. With prices continuing to rise, even though at a slower rate, there is going to be strong focus on the government around affordability. Unfortunately, the contrast of higher housing values against low income growth has made it increasingly hard for buyers to save a deposit and fund transactional costs like stamp duty. So it's likely housing affordability challenges will continue to weigh on the housing demand over the year ahead. And this is shaping up to be a major issue leading up to the federal election this year. Another prediction is that the shift to regional property will continue, but at a far less rapid rate. Since the start of the pandemic, we've seen the biggest move of Australians to regional areas ever recorded. The largest increases in population because of this shift were seen in regional Queensland, mainly the Gold Coast and Sunshine Coast, New South Wales, as well as Victoria. Even with closed borders and extended lockdowns, we saw very high levels of movement of people from Sydney and Melbourne up to the Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast, and Brisbane. This shift was driven by access to cheap finance, a lifestyle shift that came about from changes to the way people work, greater demand for second homes, and the search for space. We think it's unlikely we'll see the same strong conditions we saw over the past 2 years in regional areas continuing over the next 2 years as we get past the pandemic. But that's not to say the shift won't continue. Open borders will enable people to move up there more easily, but with more people likely to be called back into the office in the coming months, we think the shift will slow. Although holiday home demand is likely to increase with international borders opening again. A third property prediction would be a revitalisation of our CBDs. Property markets in our CBDs have been hit the hardest of all due to the pandemic. Some of our vibrant and exciting CBDs became ghost towns. Over the past 12 months, rents have fallen over 25% in Melbourne CBD and 9% in Sydney CBD because both cities were hit with the longer lockdowns than other cities and also have many more apartments. Meanwhile, in Perth, which was rarely locked down, saw one of the strongest rental growth markets in Australia with a 12.5% increase in CBD unit market rents. But in 2022, we are going to see a return of our CBDs. Much of the return will be driven by market factors. Office workers will return, retail and entertainment venues can now reopen, and international students are coming back. This leads me to the next prediction, and that is the rental demand that will increase. With the borders reopening, there will be an increase in demand for rental housing. If you think about it, when people initially move to a country or region, most rent first. Plus, with international students returning, there's an expected increase in pressure on unit rents close to education facilities. And then lastly, we expect to see construction costs start to moderate. Construction costs were a major component of high inflation in the September 2021 quarter. While prices rose by 3% overall, new dwelling rose by 3.3%, with the higher than average increase driven by supply disruptions and a shortage of materials. It's likely that these higher costs will continue in the first half of 2022 and may also be made worse by higher wage costs and stockpiling of materials. But by the second half of the year, many of the supply disruptions will likely have flowed through and construction costs will start to moderate. With all that being said, the 4 major banks believe that property prices will increase anywhere between 4.9% and 8%, with most expecting a decline in property prices in 2023. So there you have it, guys, a basic overview of where we see the market going this year. Remember, these are merely predictions and anything can change in a heartbeat, as we've seen over the last few years. Make sure to consult all your property experts, including mortgage brokers and accountants, to see if it's feasible for you to be buying property now and where the best location to do so is. Otherwise, that's it from me. I hope you found these insights in this video valuable, and if you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more property investment tips. I'm Tuan Drong from Duotax, and I'll see you guys next time.